Do you believe there are creatures that live their entire lives in the forest just to protect a human they have never met? In the spring of 1994, deep in the Ouachita Mountains, a 17-year-old girl named Iris McCrea lived alone in a wooden cabin left by her parents, two biologists who vanished in a plane crash. Every evening, Iris left food at the edge of the forest. For who? A presence her father once called the Silent Guardian. Never seen clearly, but always there, watching. Most people dismissed it as grief or imagination. Until one stormy night, 3 armed men broke into her home, searching for insurance money they believed was hidden inside. They cut the power, cut the phone line. But Iris didn't scream. She lit the old oil lamp, scattered ash on the floor, and whispered one line that froze them cold. "You're being watched." What happened next is still part of local law enforcement records, handwritten by Sheriff Ouachita Mountains herself. Unknown entity intervened, saved the girl. What if I told you this is not just a tale, but a true story, with names, places, and even a blurry photograph left behind? A girl protected by something not quite human, a forest that remembers, a creature that leaves no trace, except a choice to protect. And now I wonder, where are you watching from? How far can this story travel? From these woods in Arkansas to your screen, your heart. If you believe in kindness, in mystery, in the quiet guardians among us, give this video a like and consider subscribing. Together, let's build a community that still believes in Bigfoot, not as a monster, but as a legend of loyalty. With all my warmth, thank you for being here. Late spring, and the wind moved like something alive through the Ouachita foothills. It carried the scent of pine sap, damp moss, and something older, deeper, the hush of a forest that knew how to listen. As it rushed down the slopes, it caught the chimes hanging from the porch of a weathered old cabin. They weren't bells or shells or polished glass like in gift shops. They were keys, dozens of them, rusted, mismatched, some bent or missing teeth. They hung from fishing line, collected over years by hands that were no longer here. And when the wind hit just right, they spoke. Not like metal, but like memory. A soft, unplaceable clinking, as if someone were whispering from the edge of the trees. Iris McCrea listened without turning her head. She didn't need to. She knew the sound. She'd known it since she was a child. And today, like every day, it told her the forest was still watching. She was 17. Lean, quiet, coppery hair pulled back in a twist she barely bothered to check. Her jeans were cuffed, her boots cracked from too many winters. The old cabin had once been a research post, her parents' base during their wildlife fieldwork. But now it was hers. Her name was still taped under the coffee mug hooks. The porch creaked when you leaned too far left. The tin roof reflected late light like the skin of a dying trout. It was a place that lived half in silence and half in the echo of what used to be. And yet, she stayed. Every day, Iris left a small offering at the edge of the tree line. A few apples, some leftover beans, once even half a salmon jerky stick. She'd place them on a flat stone beside a mossy stump, then walk away without looking back. Her dad used to do the same. No traps, no cameras, no expectations, just a quiet gesture toward something neither of them could explain. A kind of trust, or maybe gratitude. She never said it out loud, but in her bones she believed something, someone, was still out there. Watching, guarding, waiting. That evening the sun dipped low enough to paint everything in copper. Cicadas throbbed in the distance. A dogwood branch scraped softly against the window. Inside, Iris sat cross-legged on the rug, flipping through her mother's old field journal. Ink faded, pages loose at the spine. There were sketches of prints, trees marked in strange patterns, notations about unusual sounds recorded at night. The last entry was short, just a phrase, "Not alone." Then it happened. The keys stopped. The wind didn't. She could still feel it, brushing past the porch, rattling pine needles and sighing through cracks in the siding. But the keys, those odd, rusted voices, had gone silent. Iris looked up. The absence felt sharp, like when the TV goes mute in the middle of a storm warning. She stepped to the door and pushed it open. The screen slapped once behind her. They were still hanging, still swaying, but no sound. Her gaze dropped. The fishing line that held the lowest key had been cut. Not frayed, not broken from wind. Sliced, clean, like a blade. She stepped onto the porch. The wind moved her hair. Her boots scuffed the wooden planks. And then she saw it. Not far, maybe 30 yards into the trees, half shaded by the leaning trunk of a loblolly pine. Something moved, not rustled, not scampered, moved upright, tall, taller than any man she knew. Its form was wide at the shoulders, narrowing at the hips, standing still but not rigid. Not a bear, not a person in hunting gear. And its face, though mostly in shadow, caught a sliver of dying light. Just enough for Iris to see that it wasn't snarling or masked or wild-eyed. It looked, watching. Her hand tightened on the porch railing. She should have been scared. She knew that. Every story, every warning, every horror movie said run, but she didn't move. And more strangely, she felt no fear. Only that strange, aching calm. The same feeling she'd had as a child when her father once whispered, "The forest knows who loves it." The figure didn't come closer. It didn't wave or growl or bolt. It simply stepped back into the trees, swallowed by green. Gone. And Iris exhaled. 15 miles downhill in the town of Mina, 4 men played poker in the back of Ricky Town's gas station. The air was sour with sweat and gasoline. A radio buzzed with country music that no one really listened to. Macklin Cade leaned back, flipping a silver lighter between his fingers, eyes never leaving the crumpled map on the table. Jace Highland, youngest of the bunch, chewed a matchstick and fidgeted like a kid on caffeine. Beau Creel sat stiff, mostly there because he owed money and didn't have better options. Ricky, who wasn't part of the job but liked to talk like he was, tapped the map with a dirty nail. "Cabins up here. No neighbors, no patrols, just a kid. I heard she's alone since her folks died." Beau rubbed his face. "You sure there's a safe?" "I said insurance money. Those research types always got something tucked away." "Or journals," Jace muttered, grinning. "Maybe we get rich off a cryptid diary." Macklin didn't smile. "We go tomorrow night. Wait for dark. No noise. In and out." Ricky shrugged. "I just told you what I heard. Ain't my fault if you run into squirrels and shadows." But Beau looked uneasy. He didn't know Iris. Didn't know about the keys or the wind or the silence. He didn't believe in ghosts or gods. But something about the way Ricky kept saying no neighbors made his gut twist. And none of them, not one, had ever heard the forest go quiet the way Iris had. Back in the cabin, the lantern flickered. Iris closed the journal and stood barefoot on the wooden floor, letting the cool boards remind her she was still here, still alive. Her fingers brushed the old shotgun mounted over the hearth, unloaded for now. She never used it, but tonight she checked the shells, just in case. Outside, the night deepened. The wind shifted east. Owls stirred. A fox barked once in the distance, and somewhere far beyond the line of trees, something massive leaned against the trunk of an old pine, hands still damp from the rain that had just begun to fall. Its fingers curled, amber eyes reflecting faint moonlight through branches. It had watched her since she was small. Had stood guard the night her mother's fever took her, silent in the storm. Had followed the scent of her father's coat long after he stopped leaving it out. It didn't understand everything, not memory, not grief. but it understood patterns, echoes, kindness, the strange, deliberate ritual of a girl who left food without asking anything in return. That night, Iris lay awake longer than usual. The chimes never rang again. But in the dark, she could still feel something moving, just beyond what light could reach. Not danger, not evil, just a presence, old as the pines and quiet as a held breath. And while she drifted to sleep with one hand near the kitchen drawer, just in case, the forest exhaled, and the air hung thick with something that wasn't quite fear, but something close, like the moment before a match strikes, like the hush before a storm, or the last sound a key makes before it disappears. She didn't know what was coming, not yet, but the mountain did, and it was already leaning closer. The rain came fast, the kind that swept down from the hills without warning, drumming on tin roofs like 1,000 fingers trying to get in. It slicked the stones, turned dust to paste, and made every shadow stretch longer than it should have. By the time it reached Iris's cabin, the wind was already howling through the trees like something searching for a name. She had just lit the kerosene lamp when the lights went out, a sharp pop from the back wall. Then darkness, complete and sudden. Not even the hum of the old fridge. The silence that followed felt too precise, too targeted, like someone had flipped a switch not just on the house, but on the world. She didn't panic. That was the first thing she'd taught herself since they died. Don't flinch first. She reached under the counter, felt for the lighter, flicked it once, twice, until the wick caught. The glow from the oil lamp pooled like a gold halo in the kitchen. It wasn't much, but it was enough to see the drawer. She slid it open, quiet, steady, and pulled out the bone-handled knife she kept wrapped in a tea towel. Not for cooking. Not anymore. She slipped it down into her right boot, the leather cold against her ankle. Then she listened. At first, there was just the storm. Wind scraping the siding. Rain pelting the windows. But then she heard it, soft, low, deliberate. Floorboards flexing near the front room. Too heavy for a raccoon. Too slow for a deer. It came again. Then the faint creak of a doorknob. Not turning, just tested. She moved toward the hallway, bare feet silent on the wood. Her hand hovered over the lamp's handle, ready to kill the light if needed. Another step. This time inside. A thud against the baseboard, like someone misjudged the corner. Then muffled voices. Male. At least 2. Possibly 3. Iris drew a breath through her nose, slow and quiet, like her father taught her when they tracked foxes. She crouched near the laundry closet, listening. The air had changed. The storm was still roaring outside, but in here, something else had arrived. Something ugly, something real. She felt it in her ribs before she ever saw a face. In the living room, Jace Hyland brushed water off his sleeves, annoyed and reckless. His boots left wet prints on the rug, but he didn't care. He kept his voice low, but his movements were loud, clumsy. "Upstairs," he said. "Go upstairs." Macklin Cade ignored him. He moved like a man who'd done this before, checking doors, drawing curtains, speaking only when necessary. Beau Creel lingered by the front window, jittery and pale. He wasn't built for this. He hadn't expected the dark to feel this thick. Outside, something shifted behind the tree line. Just beyond the swing of the porch light that no longer worked, a tall figure watched. Rain ran down its arms, soaking the coarse fur clinging to its chest. It made no sound, but its gaze didn't move from the cabin. It stood like a statue made of shadow and memory, blending with the trees, but heavier somehow. A weight the storm didn't touch. Inside, Iris moved. She crept past the bookshelf, stepping where she knew the floor didn't squeak. She couldn't fight them. Not 3, maybe not even 1. But she didn't need to win. She just needed to last. She set the lamp down near the hearth, letting its light stretch just enough to bait them forward. Then she stepped back into the hall, her silhouette vanishing into shadow. From the second-floor landing, Jace squinted at the warped glass of the side window. He thought he saw something. A movement. A shoulder, maybe. A head taller than any man. But the lightning was behind it, not in front. He waited. Blinked. Looked again. Still there. Not a hallucination, not a trick of the storm. Something standing perfectly still in the rain, watching the cabin. He stepped back, spine crawling. His hand went to his waistband, where his pistol sat, but he didn't draw it. Not yet. He wasn't ready to look like he was scared. Downstairs, Macklin opened the cabinet doors one by one. No safe, no keys. Just dried goods and a box of old trail maps. He turned to Bo. "Basement?" "No basement," Bo muttered. "It's a raised foundation. Then start pulling floorboards." But Macklin didn't. Not yet. His eyes had fallen on something pinned to the fridge. A hand-drawn sketch. A girl and a man standing in front of a cabin. Same cabin, same porch. The date scribbled in the corner, May 2009. He pulled it off, studied it. "She's been here a long time," he muttered. "She's got to have something," Jace called from upstairs. "She's got nothing." Iris's voice came from behind him. All three froze. She stood at the edge of the hallway, one hand raised, palm out. Not defiant, just calm. "There's no safe, no money, nothing here but my parents' books and canned beans." Jace laughed, sharp and shaky. "Yeah? Then why'd you bolt the door?" "Storm," she said simply. Macklin leveled his gun at her. "Show us." She didn't flinch. Just nodded once, slowly, and turned toward the back hallway. As she walked, her boots scraped lightly on the floor. Not enough to be careless, but just enough to be heard. Not to them. To something else. She passed the wood stove. The ash bin sat open. She tipped the corner slightly, letting gray powder sprinkle across the floor behind her as she led them room by room. It clung to their boots, to the air. It would lead a trail, she hoped. A scent. Something to follow. Jace cursed under his breath. No safe under the bed, no loose boards, just books and quilts and a broken lamp. Bo hung back, eyes darting to the window again and again. Something was off. The air felt too tight. He rubbed his chest. That's when he saw it. The glass on the side porch had fogged slightly from the humidity, and there, smeared faintly across it, was a print. Not a smudge, not dirt. A full handprint. Huge. 5 fingers. Human-shaped. But massive. He stepped closer. Breath fogged the glass more. He wiped it. It was still there. His legs went weak. "Macklin," he croaked. "We need to go." "No," Macklin snapped. "We're almost done." "No," Bo said louder. "There's something out." A sharp clap of thunder cut him off. Upstairs, Jace stopped moving. He didn't know why. Just a feeling. That sense you get when you're being watched, not through glass, not through walls, but through something older. Instinct. The room dimmed for a second, like the storm took a breath. Then another flash of lightning lit the room, and in the window, still there, that same figure. Unmoving, eyes catching light. Not glowing, just aware, and watching only him. Jace stepped back. His hand finally went to his gun, but the figure didn't move. It didn't have to. Downstairs, Iris paused by the back door. Her fingers brushed the latch but didn't open it. She glanced at the ash trail. Thin, faint, but visible. The wind had shifted again. She could smell it. Pine, wet bark, and something else. Something wild. Not dirty, not rotten, just other. She stepped back, let the door creak slightly. Macklin turned toward her. Then the wind slammed a window open upstairs. Bo jumped. Jace shouted. And for a moment, everyone moved at once. Hands reaching, voices rising, floorboards groaning. Outside, the figure stepped back into the dark, just enough to vanish between trees. Inside, the house held its breath, and Iris whispered, just loud enough for the room to hear, "You're being watched." Macklin raised his gun. But something else had already begun to stir. Not inside the house, not on the porch, in the forest, where the storm had finally gone quiet, where the wind was listening now. And something taller than the tallest man had just begun to walk toward the cabin, rain hitting its shoulders, mud on its heels, silence in its wake. And this time it wasn't watching, it was coming. The storm had quieted to a steady drum, like the heartbeat of the mountain itself. The lamps flickered low, shadows crawling up the cabin walls, stretching and twisting with each pulse of lightning outside. Macklin stood in the center of the living room, rain dripping from his jacket, his eyes locked on Iris. The muzzle of his gun gleamed faintly in the lamplight. The smell of wet wood and kerosene filled the air. Everything felt heavy, close, like the house itself was holding its breath. "Show me where it is," he said. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It carried that kind of danger that spoke through quiet. Iris didn't blink. She could see the rainwater running down the side of his face, a small cut near his temple where the window glass had grazed him earlier. He was a man who'd spent years talking through the barrel of a gun. "There is no safe," she said, calm, her voice softer than she felt. Macklin tilted his head. "Don't play with me, girl." Jace was pacing, restless energy burning through him. His boots scraped on the wet floor, leaving dark streaks. "She's lying," he said. "Nobody lives up here alone if there's not something worth guarding." Bo didn't move from the window. His eyes were still fixed on the glass, where the faint outline of the handprint lingered, almost invisible now. Every time he blinked, he saw it again. Huge, human-shaped but impossibly large. The fingers spread wide like something had pressed there with purpose. He swallowed hard and whispered, "We shouldn't be here." Macklin shot him a look that could cut through metal. "You start shaking now, and I'll leave you here for whatever's out there." Bo turned his face away, but he didn't answer. The truth was already written across his trembling hands. Macklin turned back to Iris. "Take me to your father's office." Iris nodded slowly, her mind racing. She moved toward the hallway, the knife still hidden in her boot. Her bare foot brushed the thin line of ash she'd scattered earlier. Faint, but enough. It clung to the soles of her skin like dust, and when she stepped forward, it whispered across the boards. She could almost feel the air shift outside, like something was paying attention. The office door groaned when she pushed it open. Inside, the air smelled of paper and cedar oil. Old maps hung on the wall, faded by years of sunlight. A single lantern sat on the desk, its flame trembling from the draft. The journal her father used to keep lay open, pages swollen from humidity. Macklin's eyes darted to the bookshelf, the old wooden trunk, the floorboards near the desk. Where did he hide it? "There's nothing here," she said. He shoved her shoulder, not hard enough to hurt, just enough to remind her who was in control. "Don't make me ask again." Jace leaned against the door frame, twirling his knife. "Maybe she needs convincing." Iris turned her eyes to him. Not angry, not afraid, just steady. "You should be careful," she said quietly. He smirked. "Why's that?" "Because you're being watched." The words hung in the air. For a moment, everything stopped. The rain, the wind, the movement of shadows. Jace's grin faltered. He glanced at Macklin, expecting a reaction, but Macklin's face was unreadable. Then a slow smirk crawled back onto Jace's lips. "Nice try, sweetheart." But something deep inside him, something primitive, was already listening. Macklin knelt by the desk. His fingers found the loose seam in the floorboard and pried it open. Beneath it lay a small hollow space lined with a thin plank of cedar. He reached inside, expecting metal, expecting the click of a latch, the scrape of steel. But what he pulled out wasn't a lockbox. It was a notebook. Leather-bound, cracked along the spine, pages filled with drawings and codes. "This it?" he said. Iris didn't answer. He flipped through the pages. Rough sketches of tree patterns, coordinates, and a series of markings like claw prints. His brow furrowed. Your dad was hiding maps? They're field notes, she said. He was studying migration paths. Migration of what? She met his gaze. You wouldn't believe me. Behind her, Jace shifted. His nerves were raw now. Every creak of the floor made him twitch. Man, we're wasting time, he said. Grab the damn thing and let's go. Bo took a step away from the window, his voice small. There's something out there. Macklin ignored him. He stood, tucking the notebook into his jacket. We're not leaving yet. If there's one, there's more. That old man kept a map for a reason. Lightning flashed through the window, blinding white. For the briefest instant, Iris saw it. A shape outside, framed by the light. A massive figure, half-turned, watching. The sight made her chest tighten, but not from fear. She looked away before Macklin could notice. He turned toward her. You so much as breathe wrong, and I'll... A loud thump came from the porch. Everyone froze. Bo's breath hitched. Jace's hand went to his gun. Iris stood perfectly still. The sound wasn't thunder. It wasn't the wind. It was deliberate, heavy, like a step. Another thump. Closer this time. Macklin raised his weapon toward the door. Who's there? He barked, his voice slicing through the rain. No answer. Only the soft creak of the porch boards settling under weight. The lamplight flickered once. The shadows along the wall seemed to shift in response. Bo took a step back, whispering a prayer under his breath. And then, silence. Jace exhaled, laughing nervously. It's just the wind, he muttered. But even as he said it, he didn't believe it. Macklin motioned for him to check it out. Go on, see for yourself. Jace hesitated. Why me? Because I said so. He swallowed hard, stepped toward the door, and pulled the curtain aside just enough to look out. Rain streaked down the glass, blurring everything beyond the porch rail. For a second, he saw nothing. Just trees bending under the storm. Then a flash of lightning split the sky, and there it was, standing still, at the far edge of the porch. A figure tall enough that its head nearly brushed the eave, broad enough that its shadow swallowed the railing. Its fur was slick with rain, dark as the wet bark behind it, and its face, human-like, expressive, its amber eyes locked with his, showed no rage, only something unreadable, something ancient. Jay stumbled back, slamming into the wall. There's something... The words tangled in his throat. Macklin grabbed him by the arm. Spit it out. It's not a person, Jace said, breath shaking. It's... He couldn't finish. The next bolt of lightning lit the room again, bright and violent. In that light, for one impossible heartbeat, Iris saw what he saw. Not a monster, not a ghost, a protector. The one her father had called the guardian of the ridge. The one who never crossed the line between their worlds, until now. The light died, leaving only the echo of thunder rolling through the valley. Macklin cursed and pulled Iris closer, pressing the gun to her temple. What the hell is this? You calling people out here? No one's coming for you, she said. Her voice didn't tremble. If anything, it was almost tender, like she pitied him. But the forest might. Bo backed toward the hall. We need to go, Macklin. I'm telling you, it's not... Shut up, Macklin barked. Iris's eyes flicked toward the fireplace. The oil lamp hissed softly beside it, the flame steady but small. She remembered her father once saying that fear has a scent, and the forest knows it. She wondered if it could smell theirs now. The sweat, the panic, the sharp tang of metal. Macklin started to move, dragging her toward the office again. If there's no safe, there's something else. He wrote about it. You're gonna show me what he meant. As he spoke, a faint groan echoed through the beams above. The ceiling boards flexed. Dust fell like snow. Jace looked up. What was that? No one answered. The sound came again, lower this time. A heavy weight shifting across the roof. Macklin turned toward the window, gun raised. Outside, the trees swayed. The rain fell harder, muffling sound, hiding movement. And somewhere beyond the line of sight, something breathed. Slow, measured, close enough that the glass should have fogged from it. Bo whimpered, "Please, let's go. We can't fight." Macklin spun and hit him across the face with the back of the gun. "We're not leaving without what we came for." The crack of metal against skin echoed through the cabin. Bo fell, clutching his cheek, blood seeping between his fingers. Iris's jaw tightened. She looked at the floor. The faint trail of ash that led from the kitchen to the porch. It had been disturbed now, smeared by boots and rainwater. But maybe, just maybe, it was enough. She stepped forward slightly, her voice quiet but clear. "If you hurt him again, you'll regret it." Macklin sneered. "Is that a threat?" She shook her head. "No, it's a warning." And as she spoke, the lights flickered once more. A gust of wind pushed through the broken window, scattering ash into the air. It swirled like smoke, catching the lantern glow before disappearing into the dark. Outside, a low, almost mournful sound rolled through the trees. Not a growl, not thunder, but something deep and human in its sorrow. The men froze. Bo's lips trembled. "It's here." Macklin stepped back, confusion flashing across his face. "What is that?" Iris didn't answer. She didn't need to. The sound came again, closer this time, vibrating through the floorboards. A presence pressing against the very air of the cabin. And in that moment, every one of them, thief, victim, and guardian alike, knew the same truth. The forest had entered the story now, and it never left empty-handed. The rain didn't stop. It thickened, like the sky had given up holding back and now emptied itself onto the mountain without apology. Water ran in sheets down the window panes. It pooled at the edges of the porch and streamed off the eaves like 1,000 tiny rivers. Inside the cabin, the storm pressed against the walls like it wanted in, like it could smell the fear. The curtains flapped once. The nails in the frame moaned. And then, a new sound. The back window, the one near the kitchen, burst open with a hollow crack. The wind roared through it, wild and cold, whipping the edge of the curtain across the room like a warning. The lamp flame sputtered, then steadied. A roll of thunder followed, deep and low, like the mountain was growling. Jace flinched. His mouth moved, but no words came out. Macklin spun toward the front door, pulling Iris with him, the barrel of the pistol digging hard against her temple. Her jaw clenched, not from pain, but from fury. The air in the cabin changed. It wasn't just the storm anymore. It was presence, a pull, a weight that dropped into the room like a held breath finally exhaled. Then came the sound that didn't belong to any storm. The creak of the front steps, one at a time, slow, deliberate, like someone with all the time in the world. No boots, no rush, just heavy weight on wet boards. The kind of sound that makes every nerve in the body lean toward the window even when the brain says, "Don't look." Bo's hands trembled at his sides. Jace stepped back until he hit the table behind him, his eyes wide, fixed on the front door. No one said a word. The doorknob turned, not fast, not forced, just turned, as if it had been invited. Then the door opened. No knock, no crash. Just the wind curling in around the edges and the soft groan of a wood that had been waiting years for this exact moment. And there it was. The figure. The one from the tree line. The one from the thunder. Tall enough to duck beneath the frame, wide enough that its silhouette swallowed the entryway whole. It stepped into the glow of the oil lamp, and the room fell utterly, violently still. Hair soaked and clinging to long limbs, fur dark from the rain, its body massive but not monstrous. It wasn't the bulk that stilled the room. It was the posture, upright, calm, watching, and the face, a human-like wild man face, amber eyes gleaming beneath the shadowed brow, skin visible beneath the wet strands along its cheeks and jaw. A short beard, not thick like an animal's mane, but sparse and human-shaped, blending into the thin fur around its throat. Its expression wasn't rage. It wasn't even warning. It was sorrow. deep and old, like it had seen too many nights just like this and knew how they could end. Iris didn't move. Jace dropped his gun without meaning to. The clatter on the floor sounded obscene in the quiet. Macklin yanked Iris backward, panic rising in his throat now, the gun shaking in his grip. "What the hell is that?" he barked, but his voice cracked halfway through. The creature took a single step forward. Not fast, not aggressive, just closer. The floor didn't creak. The storm didn't speak. Nothing moved except that figure and Iris's breath catching in her chest. Macklin swung the pistol toward it, hands slippery with rain and sweat. "I swear I'll shoot!" Iris twisted, fast and sharp, elbowing him in the ribs. The shot went off, wild and loud, ripping through the silence like glass. The bullet didn't find flesh. It skimmed the edge of her arm, slicing through skin just enough to leave a trail of blood that fell in heavy drops onto the wooden floorboards. The smell hit the room a second later. Copper and smoke. The creature flinched, but it didn't roar, didn't lash out. It stepped forward and stopped in the doorway, eyes fixed on the thin red streak now trailing down Iris's arm. The light caught the blood as it fell. One drop, then another, and in that moment, something changed in its face. The muscles in its jaw shifted, the brows knit together. Its hands, open and low by its sides, curled slightly inward like it was afraid of what they might do if they rose, and it stepped back. A full step, slow, like it didn't trust itself. Iris felt it. Felt that hesitation like a breath caught in the lungs. The cabin, the storm, the fear, all of it paused. Macklin turned toward the figure again, ready to fire another shot. But the second sound came first. The side door crashed inward, and with it came a man, old, soaked, boots caked in mud, holding a hunting rifle that looked older than the house itself. Denton Crowell. "Iris!" he shouted. Her head snapped toward the voice. Macklin turned, panicked, gun flailing. The barrel swung from the porch to Denton in an instant. But Iris moved faster. She reached down and grabbed the ash pan from the fireplace, tossing the gray dust straight into Macklin's eyes. He shouted, staggered, and fired blind. The shot slammed into the wall, shattering the photograph of her mother's smile. Jace dove for cover. Bo screamed and slipped on the wet boards. The lighter, the old one from the counter, hit the floor in the chaos, sparks flashing once, then again. It landed near the rag Macklin had used to clean the pistol, now soaked in lamp oil. The flame caught. The fire leapt. The porch roared to life with it. Flames licking up the frame, feeding on the dry timber beneath the wet surface. The smoke curled fast and mean. Shadows flickered. The light from the open door danced across the figure still standing just outside, illuminating its shape in orange and red. Denton stepped forward, rifle raised, but his aim wavered when he saw it. Not Iris, not the men, the one on the porch. For a split second, man and creature locked eyes. The hunter and the hunted. The human and the something else. But Denton didn't fire. Bo fell down the stairs, landing hard, unmoving. Iris grabbed Denton's arm, pulled him toward the back room as the smoke thickened. Her fingers slick with her own blood. The cut from Macklin's shot still seeping, her mind sharp with pain, but sharper with purpose. Macklin was coughing now, staggering toward the window, eyes still burning from the ash. Jace scrambled to find the pistol on the floor, but the smoke was too thick, the floor too slick. Every board groaned under weight and fire. Outside, the wind picked up again. Only this time, it didn't feel wild. It felt channeled. Like the forest itself was breathing deeper, responding. The creature stepped back once more, away from the fire, its eyes on Iris, her blood on the floor, the smoke rising like memory around her. And then it disappeared, not running, not vanishing, just gone, one step into shadow, as if it had never been there. Iris and Denton burst through the back hallway just as the fire climbed the drapes. She pulled him to the floor, shielding his face as they crawled beneath the smoke. ducking behind the kitchen counters. She ripped the dish towel from the sink, wrapped it tight around her arm, teeth clenched against the sting. "I got you," Denton rasped. But she wasn't listening. She was watching the front of the house, where the flames began to reach toward the ceiling, their heat roaring against the night, casting long, shaking shadows through every window. She didn't see Macklin now. She didn't see Jace. Only the fire. And outside the smoke, far beyond the porch, the forest watched again. Silent. Waiting. No sirens yet. No help coming. Just the wind, and the scent of blood, and the keys outside that didn't chime anymore. And somewhere deeper in the trees, something moved. Something that had once stepped back, now turning to step forward again. Smoke clung to the rafters like it was alive, thick and slow, crawling across the ceiling as if reluctant to let go of the house it was choking. The fire hadn't taken the whole cabin, not yet. But the porch was gone, collapsed inward, beams split and blackened. What remained glowed low and angry, embers breathing beneath wet timber as the rain did its best to smother the flame. The smoke didn't rise. It hovered, thick with soot and memory. Inside, everything smelled like burnt cloth and old fear. Iris dragged the chair across the floor with her good arm, wedging it beneath the doorknob of the small back room where she and Denton had pulled themselves. Her shirt sleeve was soaked in blood, knotted tight just above the wound where the bullet had grazed her. The rag her mother used to wrap lunch jars was now soaked in red. She didn't wince anymore. The pain had settled into a hum, low and constant, a dull reminder she was still here. Denton sat beside her, catching his breath, his chest rattling with each inhale. His old eyes scanned the smoke-heavy room with a kind of quiet dread, the kind that comes from recognizing you've lived long enough to see something you never thought real. He reached out, set his palm against her knee for a second. "You all right, girl?" Iris nodded. "I've been worse." "Liar," he muttered, then gave a dry laugh. "You get that from your daddy." From the other side of the house came a shout, faint, hoarse, laced with panic. Macklin, still alive. Somewhere in the smoke and ruin, still pushing forward like a dog too dumb to recognize a losing hand. Iris didn't move. Denton leaned against the wall, the rifle across his lap, hands trembling slightly. "I sent a signal," he said after a moment. "Before I came up. Couldn't raise anyone, but I tried. The radio. The one bolted into the dash of his truck, still running when he'd burst through her door. Maybe the call had gotten out. Maybe not. They'll come," she said. But the words felt hollow in the smoke. The storm had swallowed the mountain whole, and the world below felt as far away as the stars. Outside, the rain had slowed to a drizzle, thin and silver beneath the eaves. The fire hissed in protest, retreating back into the wood. The porch was nothing but a heap now. Splintered boards, melted nails, a blackened memory of the place where something had stood and watched her bleed. Iris reached toward the broken cabinet, pulled the drawer open with her fingertips. Inside were candles, some already half melted, and a box of matches that felt damp. She struck one. Nothing. Tried again. On the third try, it caught, flaring just long enough to light the candle. The glow was faint and trembling, but it brought a softness to the room that hadn't been there before. Not comfort, just enough light to see the edges of things. From the front room came another sound, movement. A body shifting through ash and broken glass. Then, the creak of a boot on scorched wood. Not fast, careful. Iris looked at Denton. "Bo?" she whispered. He shook his head. "Bo's out cold. I saw him fall. That was a hard landing. Jace, then, or Macklin, one of them, still crawling towards something they didn't understand." Iris stood, slowly, every muscle pulling tight. She pressed her hand against the wall to steady herself and stepped to the window. The glass was cracked from the heat, but still held. She peered out into the foggy dark. Nothing moved. But she felt it again. That hum, that presence, like the mountain had eyes. She turned back toward Denton. "We can't wait. If they try again..." "You want to run?" "I want to move. We're boxed in here." Denton nodded, stood with a grunt. He slung the rifle over his shoulder, wiped his mouth with the back of his sleeve. His knuckles were cut, maybe from the door, maybe from something worse. He didn't ask questions. He just followed her lead. Outside, in the distance, just beyond the ridge where the trees thickened, something shifted. A shape, tall and still. Watching again. Not waiting. Choosing. They reached the side door, the one near the back where the overhang hadn't burned. The air smelled like rain again, cleaner now, though still thick with smoke. Iris cracked the door and looked out. No movement. No sounds but water dripping from branches and the distant creak of wood cooling from flame. Then the night split open. Headlights. Far below, on the trail, 2 sets, crawling through the fog like slow, golden eyes. Sheriff's vehicles. She knew the shape. Boxy. Familiar. Her heart kicked once, sharp and hard. She stepped outside. Denton behind her, cautious. Bo was in the grass near the porch, groaning, one leg twisted unnaturally beneath him. Jace stood over him, bruised, his clothes soaked and torn. He didn't look at them. He was staring into the woods. Iris followed his gaze. The tree line rippled slightly. Not with wind, with movement. "Sheriff's coming," she said aloud, though it felt like a whisper. Jace didn't respond. His mouth worked soundlessly. His eyes didn't leave the trees. And then Macklin's voice broke through the quiet, wild and cracked. "You think that thing's gonna protect you?" he screamed, somewhere behind the ruin of the porch, hidden by smoke and wreckage. "You think that forest cares about you? It's just a damn animal." No one answered. The wind shifted again. The rain paused, and from the edge of the trees came a sound that wasn't a growl, wasn't a roar, but something slow and deep. Like stone dragged through soil. The hairs on Denton's neck stood up. Macklin stumbled into the open, his shirt torn, blood smeared across his chest. He held the gas can in one hand, the pistol in the other. His eyes were wild. Bo tried to crawl away, but his legs screamed beneath him. Macklin lifted the can. "I'll burn it all," he shouted. "I'll burn this whole damn mountain down if I have to." He staggered toward the front of the house. Jace stepped forward, tried to stop him. But it was already too late. The forest moved. It didn't charge. It didn't scream. It just arrived. The figure stepped from behind a birch tree, silent, huge, and impossibly fast. The gas can hit the ground before Macklin even registered the blur of motion. A hand, larger than any man's, knocked him off balance. He flew backward, landing hard against the porch beams. The pistol skidded across the wet grass and disappeared beneath a pile of timber. Macklin didn't get up. No one spoke. And then came the beams of light. 2 vehicles pulling up through the mist. Sheriff Ada McQuaid stepped out first, coat soaked to the knees, her hand already resting on the grip of her sidearm. Another deputy behind her. They paused at the sight. Iris, bloodied, standing in front of a smoldering cabin. Bo on the ground. Jace kneeling, whispering something to himself. Denton, rifle low but ready. And behind them all, just beyond the trees, a massive figure turning slowly, already fading back into the dark. Ada stared, trying to make sense of it. Her eyes locked with Iris's. No words, just a slow nod, like they both understood something had happened here that couldn't be written into any report. Ada raised her hand. "Is everyone alive?" "For now," Denton answered. The wind picked up again, carrying away the smoke. The forest held its breath, and somewhere behind them, deep in the dark, the watcher walked alone. Dawn came slowly, as if the mountain itself were still deciding whether to let the light in. Pale ribbons of pink and amber edged the clouds, brushing over the treetops with cautious warmth. The rain had stopped sometime before first light, but the world remained soaked, heavy and quiet in that eerie stillness that follows a long night of fire and blood. Smoke clung low to the ground, curling around roots and stones like it had no intention of leaving just yet. The porch was gone, reduced to smoldering beams and bent nails. What remained of the cabin stood like a wounded animal, burnt on one side, scarred by violence, but still holding together by will. Iris stepped out into the cold morning with bare feet, her soles pressing into the damp earth. The makeshift bandage around her arm had soaked through again. Blood dried into the threads, but she didn't seem to notice. Her eyes were fixed on the edge of the porch where the boards were still warm from flame. The heat had warped the grain, left behind the charred outline of a boot. Not hers, not Denton's. And next to it, placed with care, was a rifle, Macklin's rifle, the same one he'd lost the night before when he went down screaming. Now it sat there like someone had returned it as a message, not thrown, not discarded, placed, deliberate. Iris crouched beside it. The weapon was intact, but the metal arm of the trigger had been bent up, twisted tight at the joint, rendered useless. Whoever did it hadn't just taken it. They'd made sure it couldn't be used again. Iris didn't touch it. She just looked at it for a long time, her breath fogging gently in the cold. Behind her, the front door creaked open, and Sheriff Ada McCrea stepped onto the top step, hands shoved in the pockets of her canvas coat. Her wide-brimmed hat was damp, brim curled slightly from the rain. Her face was lined and unreadable. "That yours?" she asked softly. Iris shook her head. Ada stepped forward, boots crunching softly on wet gravel. She looked at the rifle, then back at Iris. "Did you see who did it?" Another shake of the head. "No," Iris said, "but I think they wanted us to know it's over." Ada glanced toward the tree line. The forest beyond the clearing was still cloaked in mist, but the air carried no sense of threat. The tension had broken sometime in the early hours, like whatever had stood watch had finally turned its back. The mountain exhaled, and the quiet that followed was the kind that felt earned, not granted. A few feet away, Bo sat on the tailgate of the sheriff's truck, both hands wrapped around a steaming mug of coffee. His leg was braced with an emergency splint, and his face was gray with pain, but his eyes stayed low, fixed on the ground. He hadn't spoken much since the medics arrived, hadn't asked for a lawyer, just kept muttering to himself in that same hushed tone, over and over, like a man trying to make sense of the shape of a thing he couldn't name. Jace sat beside him, shoulders hunched, hair plastered to his neck. His voice was low, and when he finally spoke loud enough for someone to hear, it wasn't to Bo. It was to Iris. "It saved me," he said. Ada turned to him. "I thought it was going to kill me," he continued, eyes still locked on the woods. "I looked at it, and I thought I was dead, but it didn't touch me. It just looked at me." Iris didn't say anything. Jace pulled something from his coat pocket, a small object, round and smooth. It was the necklace he'd taken from the mantel during the break-in, a silver ring on a leather cord. Her mother's. He held it out to her with both hands, like he couldn't bear to be the one to keep it. "I took it," he said, "when you weren't looking." Iris stepped forward slowly. She didn't scold, didn't reach for it either. She looked at the ring, then back at him. "You kept it safe," she said. He nodded. She took it gently, then turned and walked back toward the cabin. The air was warmer now. The sun had broken the clouds just enough to paint the ash with gold. Every charred board, every broken pane, every nail that glinted in the grass. It all looked different in the light. Sheriff Ada watched her go, then turned to her deputy. "Radio in," she said. "Let 'em know we're not bringing back bodies." The deputy nodded and moved toward the truck. Iris stepped back inside what was left of the cabin. The smell of smoke still clung to the walls. Her father's books were scattered on the floor, some burned at the edges, others untouched. The corner where the ash bin had spilled was still dark with soot. But the heart of the house, the part that had held them together, was still here. Still hers. She walked to the kitchen, opened the drawer beside the stove, and pulled out the small box where she kept odd things. keys, bits of twine, the feather from a hawk that had once landed on the porch rail, and tucked into the bottom, a folded paper, a map. Her father's old notes, drawn with care. She ran her fingers over the lines. The place where he'd marked the clearing. The place where the moss never grew, no matter how much rain came. A knock at the open door made her turn. Denton stood there, a blanket draped over his shoulders, a thermos in one hand. He looked tired but steady. "You ought to get that stitched," he said, nodding toward her arm. "I will," she said. "After." He stepped inside and handed her the thermos. Coffee, still warm. "Sheriff's gonna take the boys into Mina," he said. "Bo needs a real doc. Jace ain't talking much." "She won't press charges?" She said something like, "Let the forest keep what it wants." I think that was her way of closing the book without opening it. Iris nodded, sipped the coffee, let the heat settle in her chest. Then she looked toward the window. The curtain moved slightly, not from wind, from something else, a gesture, a passing. She walked to the door again, stepped outside. The morning had broken fully now. Light dappled the clearing. The ground was soft beneath her boots. And at the far edge of the yard, just beside the place where the tree line thickened, footprints, not boot prints, bare, huge. The weight of them pressed deep into the soil, each toe defined. They led away from the house, toward the ridge. She followed slowly, stopping just at the first row of pines. The forest stood still, but not silent. Birds had returned. A squirrel darted up a trunk. The wind rustled through the high boughs. The scent of cedar and loam and smoke hung like memory. And deeper still, she felt it, not watching her, walking away. Not retreat, not escape, just return. She stood there for a long time, then turned back toward the cabin. The sound of keys drifted from the porch as the wind lifted the chime again. Soft, metallic, like a voice she used to know. She looked up at it, watched the shapes sway, each one unique, each one worn down by time and use. The wind moved again. The forest did not answer, but it didn't have to, because somewhere in the distance, the sound of boots in mud, the hum of a radio crackling back to life, the murmur of the sheriff's voice as she made room for an old man in her truck bed. Those were the sounds of something ending. And in their place, Iris felt the quiet weight of something beginning. Not peace, but something close. The kind of silence that lets new things grow. Summer came without fanfare. It didn't burst in like some bold promise. It crept up slow, gentle, with long days and the kind of warm wind that carried more memory than sound. The forest dried at the edges first, soft leaves curling just slightly, and the trail down to the creek grew dusty and golden. By late June, the ridge behind the cabin was bright with bird song and green to its bones. The fire-scorched porch had been replaced, plank by plank, by familiar hands and quiet patience. No one spoke about what had happened here anymore. Not directly, but the land remembered. You could feel it in the stillness between wind gusts, in the careful hush that settled after every laugh. The cabin wasn't empty now. It breathed again. Iris set the wooden table out under the overhang one morning, dragging it through the dirt with her good arm while her other still healed beneath a layer of soft cotton gauze. The surface was uneven, carved with initials from long ago, but she scrubbed it clean, laid out jars of paintbrushes and small paper notebooks for the children that would soon arrive. Not students, not tourists, just a few kids from the valley who had nowhere else to go while their parents worked double shifts in town. Some of them had eyes too old for their faces. Some didn't talk at all, and some, like Cal, the boy who brought his brother's army jacket every day and refused to take it off, only came because Denton Crowell promised them they'd learn how to build things without nails. The first child arrived around 9. Then another. By 10 o'clock, Iris was surrounded by soft laughter, shuffling feet, the sound of chalk against wood, and that distinct hush that falls over a group when they all get focused at the same time. The cabin's front yard had become a sort of sanctuary now. Not formal, not fancy, just safe. Ada helped her file for the permits back in May, using a grant tied to the old research station's land charter. They named it after her parents, the McCrea Nature Recovery Program. No plaque, just a name on paper and a few quiet promises kept between tired hands. By noon, the sun had risen high enough to bake the gravel path. Denton sat beneath a canvas shade he'd built himself, his wide-brimmed hat tilted low and a tin of cold, sweet tea sweating beside his boot. His health had taken a hit after that long night, heart weaker, joints stiff, but his spirit hadn't. He carved walking sticks now for each of the kids who stayed past 3 weeks, called it a reward, said if they were going to walk this mountain, they ought to do it with something made from it. Ada showed up once a week, sometimes twice. She'd park her cruiser near the edge of the field and just sit there for a while, radio off, windows down. Sometimes she'd bring a box of canned food or drop off extra art supplies, then vanish before anyone could thank her. She didn't ask questions about what happened that night, didn't poke. She just made sure the sheriff's office kept their distance, made sure no curious news vans made it up the trail. And if anyone from the town asked too many questions, she'd just say, "The girl rebuilt, that's all you need to know." Iris rarely spoke about it either. But she knew the mountain hadn't forgotten. Most mornings, when she opened the front door, she'd find the leaves in a neat pile by the steps, swept clean, like someone had taken time to tidy the threshold. There were no prints, no signs of an animal, no wind pattern that could explain it. Just the unmistakable order of a hand that meant well. Some mornings, a stone had been moved near the stump where she used to leave offerings. Not kicked, shifted, intentionally. And once, just once, she found a line of moss growing in a perfect arc around the garden plot, like someone had tried to fence the strawberries with nature's own thread. She never mentioned it to Denton. She never had to. He saw it too. She'd catch him watching the tree line when the sun dipped low and the shadows turned blue. His fingers would tighten around the cane he now walked with, and his eyes would narrow, not in fear, but in recognition. "It's still around," he'd said once, not looking at her. "But it doesn't watch like it used to." "How does it watch now?" she'd asked. "Like it's waiting." The mail came slow out there, once a week if the weather held. But on the first Saturday in July, she got a letter. No return address. Just her name written in blocky, uneven handwriting across the front. Inside, a note scribbled in pencil. "I owe a life. Thank you for not letting it take mine." Underneath was a crumpled receipt from a hardware store in Mena. $22, paid in cash. And inside the envelope, tucked tight like a secret, was a folded $10 bill and 3 fives. Enough to buy more paper, maybe another bag of feed for the birds that nested in the old barn. The name at the bottom wasn't signed, but she knew the handwriting. Jace. She didn't cry, but she sat with the letter in her lap for a long time, then folded it again and tucked it into the back pocket of her father's journal, where it stayed. By late July, more kids came, veterans too. Older men who didn't speak much, just nodded and helped fix the steps or repaint the shed. Some brought lunch. Some brought nothing but their silence, which Iris understood best of all. One of them, a man named Elijah, brought a pack of clay and made small figurines of animals he'd once seen while posted near the Canadian border. Iris set them near the porch. They cracked in the heat, but she never moved them, and every now and then, someone swore they saw something else. A shadow, a figure. One child said she saw a man with long arms and amber eyes standing behind the dogwood tree near the ridge. When asked what he looked like, she just shrugged and said, like he wanted to see if we were okay. Iris didn't argue. She just smiled. By mid-August, the kids had carved their initials into the new porch rail. The boards were worn smooth by sandals and dirt, and the table outside was covered in sun-faded fingerprints. And though Iris still moved carefully, still checked the locks at night and kept a flashlight under her bed, she slept deeper than she had in years. The mountain didn't feel dangerous anymore. It felt watched, protected, not owned, just shared. One evening, as the light dipped behind the ridge and painted everything in soft gold, Denton sat beside her on the porch, listening to the wind shuffle through the pines. He tapped the rim of his mug and looked toward the trees. "You think it'll ever come back?" he asked. She didn't answer at first. Then quietly, "I don't think it ever left." The wind lifted the chimes. The old keys knocked softly together, each one a different note. They sounded like a lullaby with no melody, just presence. A reminder, somewhere out in that quiet wilderness. The one who had watched her family for years. The one who had stepped into fire, not for vengeance, but for balance, was still moving. Not as a ghost, not as a god, but as something else entirely. A keeper, a witness, a guardian of things most people forget how to see. Iris turned toward the trees and whispered, almost to herself, "Thank you." She didn't expect an answer, but the breeze shifted, soft and warm, and for just a moment, the forest answered. Not with sound, not with movement, but with peace. The kind that only comes when something wild and good decides, for reasons it doesn't need to explain, that you are safe. Fall came dressed in gold. Not the flashy gold of riches or spectacle, but the kind that clings to the last leaves of an old dogwood tree. Quiet, fading, honest. It swept across the Ouachita Hills in slow ripples, brushing against the cabin's tin roof, turning the wind sharper, the nights longer. Each morning Iris found the porch dusted in red maple leaves and dry pine needles, like the forest was laying down its own kind of welcome mat, one she never had to sweep away. She let it stay. Denton said it made the place look like it belonged to the season. By mid-October, the kids had gone back to school. The porch was quieter. The table under the overhang had been folded and tucked away, paintbrushes wrapped in cotton, journals sealed in plastic bins that now lived under Iris's bed. The program hadn't closed. It was just sleeping, like the mountain always did once the air snapped crisp and the clouds dragged slower across the sky. And for the first time in a long time, Iris felt something settle in her chest that wasn't grief, wasn't panic, wasn't survival. It was steadiness, a rhythm. The kind her mother used to say came when you finally stopped running. One morning, with the air cool enough to fog the windows, Iris pulled down an old storage crate marked with a rusted M in blue ink. Her mother's crate. It had lived on the highest shelf of the back bedroom closet, untouched for years. She opened it slowly, the wood creaking like a sigh. Inside, among the water-warped field notes and a pair of worn hiking gloves, she found something she didn't remember ever seeing before. A roll of undeveloped film wrapped in wax paper, labeled only with the date, October 1982. Her heart paused. She held the film up to the light, the celluloid catching the morning sun in faint amber tones. Blurry shapes, shadows, the faint outline of something large, taller than a man, framed by branches, partly turned away. Her father had always called them impressions, never evidence, never proof, just moments caught between doubt and belief. She brought the roll to the old pharmacy in town, where Ms. Laurel still developed film in a dusty back room like it was still 1996. It took a few days. When Iris came to pick it up, the envelope was sealed with tape and a handwritten note in the corner that just said, "I didn't show anyone." She waited until she was back at the cabin to look. She sat by the window, the late afternoon light falling in slanted beams across the floor. The photos were black and white, a little overexposed, but clear enough. The first few were trees, the creek bed, her father's boots standing near a thicket. But the last one, she held her breath. It showed the clearing near the stump, the one where she used to leave food as a girl, before she ever fully understood why. In the distance, just beyond the edge of focus, a figure, not running, not blurred by movement, standing, watching, broad shoulders, sloping arms, a face turned almost fully to profile. There was nothing monstrous about it, If anything, the shape felt familiar, like a story told too many times to be made up. She turned the photo over. No writing, no date, just a small circular watermark in the corner. Developed by McCrea Wildlife Survey, Ouachita region. That night, she lit the lamp and placed the photo on the mantel beside the old carving knife her father used to keep. She didn't say anything, didn't pray, just looked at it for a long time, as the wind whispered through the rafters and the chimes outside rattled once, soft and slow, like a memory tapping gently at the edge of her sleep. The next morning, Sheriff Ada came up the road in her truck, boots crunching leaves as she walked to the porch. She handed Iris a folder, said the court process was done. Sentencing finalized. No appeals. Jace had testified. Bo had taken a plea. Macklin was going to prison for a long, long time. There wasn't much else to say. Ada reached for her hat, nodded toward the woods. Place looks different now, she said. It's quieter, Iris replied. Ada squinted at the tree line. Quieter's not always bad. No, Iris agreed. Sometimes it's just peace. They stood in silence for a while, listening to the wind move the dry branches. Before she left, Ada pressed something into Iris's palm. A silver coin, worn at the edges. The sheriff shrugged. It was in the floorboard of my truck after that night. Don't know how it got there. Thought maybe it belonged here. After Ada drove off, Iris walked back to the edge of the yard and placed the coin near the moss-covered stone where the old offerings used to go. She didn't bury it, just set it there. A small thing, but enough. That evening, just after sunset, Denton collapsed near the woodpile. He'd been stacking the last of the season's logs, moving slower than usual, breath shallower. Iris found him slumped against the shed, one hand on his chest, the other gripping a bundle of kindling. She called for help, her voice steady but sharp, and within the hour, a volunteer medic had him bundled in blankets and loaded into the back of a neighbor's truck bound for the clinic down in Mena. He made it through the night, but the news wasn't good. A failing heart. Nothing sudden, just a slow winding down. He'd known for months, maybe longer. Iris sat by his bedside the next day, holding his hand, listening to his slow breathing as the rain pattered softly on the tin roof of the clinic. The nurse stepped out to give them privacy. I was never afraid of dying, Denton said, his voice rasping like old paper. I was afraid of not knowing if it all mattered. She looked at him. It did. He smiled, eyes half closed. You'll keep this place going? She nodded. Yeah, I will. He didn't need to say anything else. The next morning, the nurses found something outside his window. Just below the sill, tucked between two slats of wood, was a small bundle of foxtail grass, tied with a thin strand of cedar bark. His favorite. The kind he used to tuck behind his ear when he was younger. There were no footprints in the mud, just one wide smear near the base of the wall. A handprint, massive, human-shaped. Iris didn't ask. She didn't need to. Spring came again. Not fast, not loud, just gentle, like it always had. The air warmed. The trees turned soft with buds. The kids returned. So did the veterans. The porch filled once more with stories and drawings and the clatter of tools. But something else returned too. That feeling, that presence. She noticed it first on a walk with the younger kids, just past the bend in the trail where the creek widened. There, beside her boot, in the soft mud, was a footprint. Bare, broad. Next to it, another, longer, almost parallel. The size of a man's boot beside something twice as large. She stared at them for a moment. No one else seemed to notice. She didn't tell the kids. She just walked a little slower, like she wasn't walking alone. Back at the cabin, she found the wind had swept the porch again. Clean. Just like always. She stepped inside, lit the lamp, and looked toward the photo still sitting on the mantel. The one from her father's old roll of film. She touched the edge of the frame, then turned back to the door, and as the wind picked up and the chimes began to sing softly once again, She smiled. Not because the story was over, but because it never really would be. Not here, not between them, not between the forest and the girl who listened. Because the promise had never been made in words. It had been made in silence, in presence, in one steady hand reaching out, not to hurt, not to be seen, but simply to return what had once been lost. And somewhere just beyond the trees, the guardian still walked. Not as a myth, but as a memory that breathes and keeps its promises, always. Some stories are not meant to be shouted. They arrive in quiet ways, in the hush between thunder and rain, in a footprint where no one should be walking, in the stillness of a porch after the fire is long gone. And they stay with us, not because of how loud they were, but because of what they left behind. This wasn't a tale of monsters or miracles. It was about what remains when the noise fades and the world stops looking. It was about the spaces in between, the silence, the waiting, the choices we make when no one is watching. About how healing never comes in grand gestures, but in slow returns, in swept porches, in unspoken mercy, in knowing that sometimes to truly be seen is to not be hunted, not be feared, not even be named, but simply to be left in peace. At its heart, this story speaks of the invisible threads that bind us, not by blood or law or belief, but by care, by witness, by that strange, wordless understanding that something sacred exists when we show kindness without expecting anything back. That maybe the world doesn't need to be explained as much as it needs to be respected. Because what we protect protects us, and what we leave behind remembers us. There are things in this world that live quiet, long lives, far beyond our comprehension. They do not seek our permission to exist. They do not ask for our approval. But sometimes, if we are still enough, if we are good enough, they let us share space with them. For a moment, for a season. And if we're lucky, if we're gentle, they might even teach us something we forgot. That love doesn't always have to speak. That justice isn't always loud, and that gratitude can look like nothing more than not taking more than you need. The forest doesn't keep score. It keeps memory. And when it answers, it doesn't always do so in language. Sometimes it answers with a gesture, a sound, a shadow turned away, instead of toward. That's the difference between being watched and being protected. Between being feared and being forgiven. And maybe that's the message here, in the end. That there are still guardians in the world. Not the kind made of stone or steel or sirens, but the quiet ones. The keepers of balance, of old promises, of ancient grief. They exist not to punish, but to preserve. To remind us that the wild, when met with reverence, can be a home, not a threat. So, if you ever find yourself walking in the woods alone and feel the weight of something just beyond the trees, don't be afraid too quickly. Stand still. Listen. Remember that some silences are not empty. Some are watching, and some are waiting to see if we've learned how to be gentle yet. Thank you for spending time with this story. We hope it stirred something soft, something sacred, something human in you. If it did, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to the channel, so you won't miss the next story that's already making its way through the trees.